The Sacramento Kings have reportedly entered back into the Zach LaVine trade conversation, and it's an interesting one. We're going to break it down, all that and more, right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Sir Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and get into the content for today. So this one's coming from Michael Scotto, who mentioned that the Bulls do have a level of interest in Kevin Huerter. Now, we've heard that the Sacramento Kings were interested before in being into the Zach LaVine trade scenario. They have another clutch sports client in De'Aaron Fox down there and pairing him with Fox and Domantas Sabonis to form a core three players. I don't know if you could call it a big three. We also heard rumors that the Sacramento Kings are also interested in Pascal Siakam, which they would use kind of the same assets for. So this could come down to just whichever team is willing to accept the deal. But we got a little bit of more detail on it in this one, and more detail in regards to what the Bulls are doing in regards to this. So apparently the Bulls are very interested in Kevin Huerter being a part of the deal. Harrison Barnes will reportedly be involved in the deal as well to kind of make the salaries fit. But Chicago is really interested in Kevin Huerter and has gone as far as to already doing some background intel on Kevin Huerter to find out why he's kind of struggled a little bit this season. But he's a player that they have reportedly liked for a while now, and he's a player that could help contribute to, the winning with the Chicago Bulls and kind of fit into what they already have going on there without necessarily kind of disrupting, what they have going on and needing to take a lot more shots from other players. So this is the first time we've really heard what the Bulls' interests are, and the fact that the Bulls are doing any type of intel gathering on any player. Now, still take this with a grain of salt, as all the Zach LaVine trade rumors, as I told you guys a little while ago. Everything that's going on with Zach LaVine, both the positive and negative, is all just speculation at this point. But Kevin Huerter is a player that has some skill for sure, but he has definitely taken a step back. When you look at it, last season averaging 15.2 points per game, doing that on 48% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from three, taking 6.8 three-pointers per game. Those would fit in really well in what the Chicago Bulls are doing now. Stretch the floor, add to provide some extra spacing for the team as well. But then you got to look at this season. And so in this season so far, he's played 35 games. He's started 30 of those games, but he's only averaging 9.8 points per game, shooting the ball 41% from the field, and taking about a 3.5 less per game, but also shooting that at only 33% from the field. So those are signs for concern. So hearing that the Chicago Bulls are doing some information gathering on exactly what's going on to Kevin Huerter, kind of stepping, or his impact stepping back a little bit for the Chicago Bulls, it kind of makes sense there, right? And then also hearing in this that the Bulls, any type of deal that's centered around Huerter and Harrison Barnes would also want draft compensation back. Michael Scotto saying in this one that the Kings would have to attach at least 2 first-round picks to Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter to get this conversation going if it comes down to it. And especially with teams like Los Angeles Lakers kind of also entering back into the Zach LaVine trade conversation as well, which we already knew. We heard that, they may prefer DeJounte Murray, and they had OG Anunoby on their list as well. OG's already been traded. They may pivot to DeJounte Murray, but it may enter back into the Zach LaVine sweepstakes. It makes sense that the Bulls maybe now for a time period where we heard that Zach LaVine's trade market was basically zilch, we may now hear that it comes on the other side of that where it may start upping itself. You're not just going, listen here, this is what I'll say with it. They're not going to trade Zach LaVine for pennies on the dollar. Now, they may not get back the reported interest that they were in them before, but reportedly they're not just going to go down to it. Now, we also have another wrinkle in this, is that right now is that the trade of Zach LaVine, reportedly Jerry Reinsdorf has now gotten involved in this situation as well, saying that Jerry Reinsdorf actually does not like the deal so far for Zach LaVine, and he actually hates most of the trade packages. So, that's interesting as far as the narrative around Zach LaVine, especially with the narrative of nobody's being interested as well. And that, that's why I say the fact that the Chicago Bulls may not be interested in trading Zach LaVine for pennies on the dollar, that part of Jerry Reinsdorf getting back involved in, and the fact that he doesn't like the market right now that he's hearing for Zach LaVine. So again, we'll see. But right now it seems like, the Bulls may not be as short-sighted as maybe is what some Bulls fans were concerned they were going to be in the Zach LaVine trade scenario. And I'll say this, if Jerry Reinsdorf is chipping in on this and saying, hey, I don't really like the packages that we could potentially get back for Zach, that adds a different wrinkle on it, right? So you got to ask yourself, when the fact that Zach LaVine worth his salary or not, that is what it is, right? At this point, he's on it. You can't trade it. But the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf kind of wants the Bulls to make sure now that they are getting more value back than just dumping their highest paid, their largest contract they signed in franchise history and just getting pennies on the dollar, that can add a different wrinkle in what we've heard before around the Zach LaVine trade scenario. So keep that in mind, guys. Like I said, take everything that we're hearing with a grain of salt. Every single thing needs to be taken with a grain of salt. I want to make sure that I say that. But there is something to be said that, hey, with that being said, if Jerry's getting involved in it, that may mean that the Bulls are really kind of spinning their wheels trying to figure out what the best scenario is for Zach LaVine. But let me know what you guys think. Hearing that the Chicago Bulls will request 2 first-round picks back if the Kings do try to do a deal centered around Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes, does that make you feel a little bit better about what we've heard about what could be out there for Zach LaVine? And even hearing that the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, is now getting involved as well in these talks, and the fact that he's not happy with the market that he's hearing right now for Zach, which could lead to Zach staying on this team until that market improves, which could get interesting with the chemistry and stuff on the team. We'll see what happens with that. Ultimately, you'll see tonight Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic potentially moving back into that starting lineup for the Chicago Bulls. But let me know what you guys think on that. I feel like this is a kind of an interesting take, and I do think that it may explain why, as some people were thinking that the Bulls may try to pull the trigger on a deal earlier, regardless of what was back, just to kind of get it done, that Jerry Reinsdorf now kind of inserting himself. No, you can't really. He's the owner of the team. Is he inserting himself if he's the owner, but just not liking the trade market for Zach LaVine and not liking what he's hearing? I think that adds a new wrinkle of the difficulty in moving Zach LaVine if now owner Jerry Reinsdorf is kind of overseeing this as Emperor Palpatine himself is really trying to get involved in what is happening with this market for Zach LaVine. Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. As always, make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.